Magandang araw, Pilipinas. Kanina nga ay nagkaroon ng Senate inquiry itong si Senator Amy Marcos kaugnay dito sa nangyari na merong ipinasa na request ang United States government sa ating US Embassy doon sa Washington DC, na kung saan nagre-request pala ito last year pa, October 2022, na yung kanilang mga dating empleyado ng US government, pero mga Afghan national doon sa Afghanistan, alam naman natin kung ano nangyari doon, ay pinangakuan siguro nila na maging US citizen. Ngayon, bago dalhin sa US itong mga Afghan nationals, ay dadalhin muna dito sa Pilipinas ang ilan upang iproseso ang kanilang mga papeles papunta doon bago pumunta sa US. Kaya nabahala itong si Senator Amy Marcos dito sa nakuha niyang balita. Kaya nandun kanina ang mga pangunahing ahensya ng ating pamahalaan na kung saan inibitahan sila nitong si Senator Amy Marcos. At ito nga ay pangunahin na yung ating Philippine Ambassador to the United States, na si Ambassador Babe Romualdez. Ganon din ang Department of Foreign Affairs dito sa atin sa Pilipinas sa pangunguna ni Secretary Manalo. Mahusay itong si Manalo, career executive ito ngayon, nandun din ang ating bagong secretary ng National Defense na si Gilbert Chudoro. Nako, mahusay din itong tao na ito. At siyempre pa, nandun din yung mga kinatawan ng NBI, ng BI, Bureau of Immigration, ganun din ng National Intelligence, yung NICA natin. Kaya pati DOJ nandun din. Kasi maraming katanungan itong si Senator Marcos kaugnay nga dito sa implication, tulad nga nung sinabi natin kanina, ay patitirahin muna ng US government dito sa Pilipinas itong mga Afghan nationals na dati nilang mga empleyado. Siyempre, alam naman natin na sinakop nitong US, Inayos niya, ika nga, sabi nila, itong Afghanistan at pinaalis ang Taliban doon. So, itong mga empleyado nila na ito, most probably, pinangakuan nila na okay, dahil naging loyal kayo sa amin at maaring guguluhin kayo ng Taliban dito sa Afghanistan, dalhin na namin kayo sa US. Yun nga lang, patitirahin muna nila dito sa Pilipinas. At ang totoo ay hindi lang daw sa Pilipinas ito nangyayari, kundi nag-request din ang US dahil ally din nila tulad ng Pilipinas, ang Germany, Albania at iba pang mga bansa. Okay? So, sabi ng Department of Foreign Affairs, nag-background check na daw itong US government doon sa mga Afghan national na yon, At ang sabi pa sa balita ay lahat ng gastusin ng mga Afghan nationals na ito ay walang ibibigay ang Pilipinas, sagot lahat nitong US government. Ang inaalala lang nitong si Senator Amy Marcos, kumusta yung mobility? May restriction ba ito? Kasi siyempre baka mamaya kung saan-saan pumunta, pero nangako naman daw ang US government na no one will be left behind kung aalis na sa Pilipinas itong mga Afghan nationals. At ayon sa impormasyon ay nasa 30,000 to 50,000 daw itong mga Afghan nationals. Actually, pinaprocess na daw ito sa iba't ibang mga bansa din. Okay? At sinabi ng Department of Foreign Affairs na thousands daw per batch per month ang darating. At ngayon ay naroon sa Afghanistan, ang iba nasa Pakistan pa na dadalhin dito sa Pilipinas.
The ambassador says that thereafter the State Department also reiterated the request directly to the DFA. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair. In fact, the Secretary of State directly raised this with me on a few occasions, verbally, and also in a letter, which I'd be happy to provide later. And in fact, President Biden also briefly raised the issue with President Marcos during the visit last May.
However, in the interest of transparency, are you able to share with us how many Afghan nationals in total the U.S. intends to temporarily house in the Philippines? How many on a per month or a per batch basis would be housed in this country? I think Senator Jinggoy already mentioned our gaping housing gap locally, and the sudden urgency to house aliens and non-nationals suddenly taking primordial concern. Secretary Manalo, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, we have not gone into that kind of detail in our informal consultations with the United States because they have come back now and again over the past few months to discuss some of the issues involved. All I can say at this point, and I say that because there's really nothing agreed yet, but it seems that there is the possibility, if we were able to have any kind of arrangement, we would be having perhaps a pilot group, maybe a limited number. Now, we haven't even discussed that number yet. To first, we could first see how that pilot group would work, and then we would decide on how to proceed after that. But we have not gone beyond that issue, other than to say we might have a pilot group. But what I can say are the following, and these appear in the concept note and also after further informal talks with the United States. We understand from the U.S. that all Afghans who will be traveling with valid passports and will have already, before they were to arrive, if they were to arrive here, would already have undergone rigorous security vetting and background checks to verify that they have indeed previously worked for the U.S. government, because these will be Afghans who had worked before with the U.S. government. And we've also been informed that all costs would be shouldered by the United States government. Also, the United States would, with Philippine officials, try and select a suitable site where they could be located while they are being processed or vetted. It would, of course, be up to the Philippines. We also mentioned that to them, that if any arrangement, it would be up to the Philippines to impose mobility restrictions and internal movements within the Philippines. The U.S. also committed to us that in the event there are Afghans who come here for processing, that no one would be left behind in the Philippines. And that includes even those who may be denied an SIV, whom we expect will be removed to another country outside the Philippines as soon as their maximum allowable period of stay expires. And therefore, any agreement we feel on this effect with the U.S. must contain provisions regarding the removal of those denied an SIV. There are also a number of points I could.
Yes, Secretary, we're in receipt of your briefer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, that's correct. So the numbers have not been discussed, but there have been various reports. Perhaps Ambassador Romualdez, you could help us. There are reports that upwards of 1,000 eligible Afghan nationals per month would be sent, maybe 1,005 to 2,000 per batch, reaching a total of 30 to 50,000 Afghan nationals to arrive in the Philippines under this effort. Is that correct, Ambassador Romualdez?
Yes, Madam Chair, that is what they were telling us, that they would like to see if they can bring in at least 1,000 per batch. However, I just want to point out that it is really completely
Does
up
it
to
mean
us.
per batch per month? And the second batch will not come in until the first batch of 1,000 has departed and been processed to go to the United States? Or will there be 30 to 50,000 total Afghans in the Philippines at one time?
It's completely up to us on how we want to proceed with this request. We can have it 1,000 each time, and they will be repatriated to the United States once they receive their SIVs, or they will bring in perhaps 1,000 or 2,000. It depends on the kind of boarding or lodging that they will provide, which all of these, they will be at their expense.
Yes, thank you. I would like to call on Senator Coco Pimentel, who has been raising his hand.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. may I ask, where are these potential Afghan refugees right now?
From the
Ambassador
way,
Romualdez.
yes, from the way I understand it, they are currently located either still in Afghanistan, perhaps some of the family members of this people who worked in the United States with the United States government. But the last conversation I had with the State Department is that some of them are in Pakistan at the moment.
So thank you for that point of information, Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator
There are 29 to 33 Filipinos still in Kabul right now, working for various NGOs. We have, correct me if I'm wrong, Secretary Manalo, we have accepted a similar number of Syrian refugees. And during the past decades, we accepted several East Timor refugees. And if hindi pa ako buhay, during the time of President Quezon, syempre po, libo-libo po yung Russian Jews. So the question of distance probably is inapplicable right now. And during the time of President Marcos, we have the South Vietnamese being stationed temporarily in Palawan. So, Mr. Ambassador, kung sakali pong pumunta rito yung Afghans, ang kinakatakutan po kasi ng marami, parang nagkaroon ng stereotyping na suicide bombers ito. Ito po ba mga edukado? Ito po ba mga kababaihan? Ito po ba binubuo ng pamilya na naiwan? Hindi po ito yung mga nakasabit sa eroplano. Ito po yung naiwan doon dahil nagtrabaho sa mga embassies. Tama po ba?
Tama, tama. Hindi, all of them, lahat sila nagtrabaho for the US government in one way or the other. At saka yung kanilang mga pamilya. Kaya it's anywhere between 50 to 60,000 that are still being processed for repatriation to the United
And you're
States.
perhaps aware, Mr. Ambassador, that we are a signatory to countless international agreements
Yes.
that should allow us to accept these Afghans
Yes.
in our soil. Tama po ba yan?
That's correct, Senator.
Madam Chair, if I may be allowed to express my personal sentiment, I don't see anything wrong here. Sa tingin ko po, kung talagang na-vet ito, nagkaroon lang ng konting hype, stereotyping, bordering on discrimination. Na siguro naman, mabubuting tao yung iba. Yung mga FW po natin, nasa iba't ibang bansa, tinatanggap naman po yun. Kasasabi ko lang, merong 33 na Filipinos pa sa Kabul. So siguro kung masasala po ito, wala tayong gastos, nasa secured na lugar, nasa isang isla. I think, Madam Chair, we have abided and complied fully with all our international humanitarian commitments, including the possible erasure of what they term as, quote-unquote, human rights records of our country. Malinis na ho tayo dito. We're getting here with clean hands. Tinulungan po natin yung mga tao na wala namang mga
Okay.
kasalanan. Details will be laid down. But yun lang po yung sentiments ko, Madam Chair. But
Yes,
ang mali lang po dito siguro, yung proseso, shrouded in non-transparency manner, not revealed to the country, not full explained, siguro DFA ang dapat managot yan, pero yung mga Afghans, wala po silang kasalanan.
Ngayon, ayon doon sa sinabi ni Senator Tolentino, mukhang okay naman daw. Sabi nga niya na mukhang okay naman daw sa kanya itong bagay na ito, considering na kilala tayo ng mga Pilipino na mapagpatuloy. Ika nga, hospitable. Kasi sa experience natin mula pa noong panahon ni President Quezon, no, ay nag-host na tayo ng mga refugees galing sa ibang bansa, particular na ang mga Hudyo, no? Kaya pag pumunta pala tayo sa sa Israel, wala na pala tayong visa doon dahil nga doon sa kabutihang ginawa natin sa kanila. Okay? So ngayon, ang ipinag-aala lang ipinag-aalala lang ni Senator Amy Marcos, na kino-question niya actually, na sa kasalukuyan daw ay mayroon ng 10,000 at 25,000 na ganito rin, na pinaprocess din ang kanilang mga visa at mga iba pang mga dokumento na bago pumunta ng US doon sa bansang Qatar at United Arab Emirates. Okay, UEA. So, sabi ni Senator Marcos, bakit hindi na lang nila ituloy doon? Kung 50,000 lang naman pala ito, nakaprocess na ng 10,000 ang Qatar, ang UEA 25,000, o bakit hindi na lang ituloy doon? Total, sabi ni Senator Marcos, hindi niya lang madirekta pero parang gusto niyang sabihin, pareho silang mga Muslim. Na sabi niya, pareho ang kanilang paggawi, no? Hindi na sila mahihirapan. Mga kinakain nila, pareho na rin, di ba? At iba pa mga bagay sa pagiging Muslim nila. Oo. So, hindi niya lang madirekta. Pero may point nga naman, no? Kung sa kasalukuyan ay mayroon ng ganong kaayusan sa ganong mga kapareho nilang Islamic country, bakit hindi na lang ituloy doon? Yun ang ibig sabihin ni Senator Amy Marcos. Okay? So, next week ay mag-meeting ang iba pang mga departamento kasi marami pang tanong, lalo na si Gilbert Gibo Chodoro, marami daw siyang itatanong. At yun nga, si Ambassador Romualdez, marami ding itatanong sa US government na pinapatanong ni Senator Amy Marcos kaugnay sa isyong ito.
Ngunit ang ating tinatanong ngayon, kung bakit ipapadala ng Amerika ang kanilang mga dating empleyado sa ating bansa. Wala naman tayong kinalaman dito. Hindi ba nila tayo binigyan ng dahilan? What reason was given by the US for making the aforementioned request, if any? Ambassador Romualdez, Secretary Manalo, and as mentioned by Senator Tolentino, are they in fact refugees? What is the understanding of the DOJ, the DFA, and the BI of the term refugee? Ambassador Romualdez has explicitly stated these are not refugees. They are former Afghan employees of the U.S. government. I need clarification po. Secretary Manalo, Ambassador Romualdez, please respond and lend us light here. Secretary Teodoro is shaking his head. Would you like to both in, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Your Honor. Technically, they're not refugees because basically they're not displaced. They're in their homeland right now. They have not applied for political asylum or any other thing. They're not on extraterritorial jurisdiction. My understanding is that their visas for the United States shall be processed within this country because of administrative difficulties of the U.S. government, because of their bureaucracy in conducting any processing, but they are not refugees as of this time. They may become refugees
That is
if
correct.
their visas are denied and they are not
And they're not
repatriated.
allowed to be repatriated.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, I'm in full agreement. I think they are not refugees, as rightly pointed out by Ambassador Babes Romualdez. Is that correct, Ambassador? Was your statement regarding the fact that these are not refugees we are speaking of, and there is no doubt that the Philippines upholds and takes pride in our history of giving succor and refuge to international refugees. Ambassador Romualdez, please. These are not refugees,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, absolutely correct, Madam Chair. They are not refugees. They are employees or former employees of the U.S. government, and they're asking us if we could help them in processing them, precisely as pointed out by Secretary Teodoro, that it is a matter of administrative in nature.
Thank you. That being the case, I get affirmation as well from DFA Legal that they are not refugees. That is correct? Okay, if that is the status of these individuals, what is the basis, therefore, of the executive branch of government for admitting them into the Philippines under Section 47 of Commonwealth Act 613 on the power of the President to admit aliens for humanitarian reasons, expressly referring only to refugees? Yes, Secretary Manalo, please. What is
Thank-
the basis, since they clearly are not refugees, they cannot be accommodated under Section 47 of the Commonwealth Act?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In fact, the notion as we understood it from the concept note of the United States is there's no intention to leave them here in the Philippines. They're only going to use the Philippines as a temporary site for their processing for their eventual trip to the United States, provided they pass all the vetting. And the U.S. In our talks has also assured us, if in case we agree, that they would ensure that none of the SIV applicants would be left behind, nor have the option to consider remaining in the Philippines to seek refugee status. So this would only be, in effect, a temporary situation. And if I could just.
Given the extraordinary circumstances, and we appreciate the emergency concern, the worry is, what shall be their status while they remain in the Philippines? Will they be non-immigrants or immigrants? What kind of Philippine visa will they be given? Under what treaty will their rights and obligations be governed? The problem is that the special immigrants visa has been promised in 2 weeks. The reality is that we are also aware that they could come as late as 59 days. In the United States, 77,000 continue to wait for their visas for periods longer than 4 years. May we have clarity on their status while they remain in the Philippines?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In this case, the Afghan nationals who would be coming here are, in fact, all Afghan nationals are listed as Category A. In other words, restricted nationals who are required to apply for a visa in the Philippines. And normally we would give them up to 30 to 59 days.
So sorry, what will they be again? Non-immigrant, immigrant?
Non-immigrant.
So non-immigrant. So klaro yan, non-immigrant.
Category
Okay.
A, yeah.
And under which treaty are we governing the rights and obligations? Non-immigrant sa ilalim ng alin?
Okay, I'll have to consult on that, Madam Chair. Which treaty?
Madam Chair, we had a meeting.
Yes, Secretary.
On Monday
Oo.
with the undersecretaries of the DOJ and Undersecretary Lazaro and Undersecretary Vasquez. Actually, the major problem here really is an immigration problem and a legal problem. And so I think if the DOJ is already prepared, because they still have to come out. We have requested them finally for an opinion on the potential status of these people and the problems in case or the way forward in case their SIVs are denied. To date, Madam Chair, we are still waiting for the opinion. It was only formalized last week that the DFA shall be the lead agency in our conference, person-to-person conference. And we are very sensitive to the issues raised by the chairperson that this not being per se a humanitarian issue, it could turn into a humanitarian issue in case the obligations of the other party are not complied with. Therefore, this was raised to us by the DOJ.
Thank you very much. Yes, we're very pleased, and truly the differences are glaring between refugees, non-immigrants, and immigrants insofar as regulations, restrictions, and their freedom of movement is concerned. So what would be off the top of our heads the status if they were non-immigrants? They would be granted freedom of mobility while they are waiting, as they are in the National Convention Center in Arlington, Virginia, as we're well aware. Or as non-immigrants, will they be confined to a single space, apparently in New Clark City? Is that the consideration? What other distinctions do you think are important? I believe that the NBI is deeply concerned about the security permutations in as much as they would impact on our own public safety.
Madam Chair, if I may be
Yes,
permitted
Secretary, please.
to answer, even the housing is still under consideration. We also do not want them to be housed as if they were detainees, which is the furthest thing from the image we want to portray. And keeping them for an extended period of time within a confined environment, particularly with their children involved, will not only complicate their physical liberty, but the end state of their mental health and wellness too. That is why, Madam
There's also, Secretary, sorry to butt in, but actually, there's also the consideration that they'll be coming back and forth to apply for their special immigrant visa from New Clark City and all the provinces involved, going towards the U.S. Embassy in Metro Manila. Is that our understanding?
Madam Chair, insofar
Because that
as
is
the-
what is stated so far in the brief.
No, Madam Chair, as far as the informal discussions between us last week is that there will, all the services from the processing to their medical care shall be done on site.
This is not medical care. I think this has to do with their visa application.
Even then, Madam Chair, the U.S. Embassy has to place extension services.
Parang iba yung
In the
sinabi ng
site.
DFA. Ang sabi ng DFA, mag-a-apply pa sila sa consular offices ng US Embassy.
Ah,
Wala dun sa Clark.
Madam-
Pabalik-balik sila. Kaya yung sinasabing confined to a certain space, hindi realidad yun. Yes, Secretary
But I
Manalo.
clarify.
Although NBI is recommending, according to their briefer, I hope I quote you right, na sana magpadala ng visa, special visa officer na lamang dun sa lugar, imbes na ganito. Yes, Secretary Manalo, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, when we referred to the U.S. Embassy, et cetera, here, that is the U.S. proposal. And we still have to react to that. And I think Secretary Teodoro, after we talked, felt that we feel perhaps that this should not be the arrangement. But the U.S. proposal, at least in their concept note in discussions, was that the applicants would visit the U.S. Embassy here in Manila for a visa interview, and then an embassy-identified hospital for medical evaluation for the actual issuance of U.S. visa. That is the U.S. suggestion.
Yes, that's the American
We
suggestion.
are
As,
not necessarily in agreement with that.
I understand. The reason, of course, is that until October of last year, in the National Convention Center of Virginia, where they were actually being processed, they could leave the facility at any time, were not considered prisoners by any means, and could therefore have freedom of mobility. Is that the same thing we're suggesting? And have we consulted New Clark City, Tarlac, for example, Pampanga, Subic, and the rest of the ramparts? Yes, Secretary Teodoro, please.
Madam Chair, we have not proceeded to that extent as far as I know. And if there will be, insofar as the Department of Defense and perhaps even our fellow security sector officials, the least amount of area they can travel from and to would be naturally physically better for us. Now, the optics of this may be different, but the least amount of travel. However, we have not discussed in thorough detail a definite site where this will be. And we definitely have to consult with the officials involved in the areas, just like we have when we apply for an ECC, for that matter, Madam Chair.
Yes, I'm just curious why there's been a change of heart. I mean, in the past, we're aware that following the withdrawal of the United States from Kabul, many Afghans were processed in the United States. Bakit bilang nabago? They used to house the Afghan evacuees in facilities within the U.S., like I said, the National Conference Center in Virginia. And then in September 2022, there appears to have become a new strategy where the Afghans arriving in the U.S. no longer will be temporarily housed in safe haven facilities in the U.S. What is the reason? Maybe Ambassador Romualdez, you can tell us what is the reason for the change in strategy of the United States? Bakit ayaw na nila tanggapin yung mga Afghan doon sa National Convention sa Arlington? Eh, napakarain na nung dumaan doon. Ba't biglang nagbago? at biglang tayo na ang kinakatukan?
Well, actually, they're really, the fact is that there are quite a number of them. And as you said, they have that here in Virginia. Pero the main reason why they're also asking other countries, we're not the only one, by the way. There are other countries. I think Germany is also being asked. They also had a processing center in Qatar, and from what I understand, also in Albania. Is because there's just so many of them that they would like to be able to do it quickly as possible, because they have a timeline, I suppose. And that's the reason why we're being asked as an ally of the United States. We are one of a number of countries that they have requested if they could use it. They use the country for the processing of these Afghan nationals that work with the United States government.
Yes, Ambassador, you say there are just too many Afghans. We're talking about tens of thousands, because we have heard that 25,000 were already processed through UAE, 10,000 in Qatar. You now mentioned Germany and Albania. Are there tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions? Is there a projected number to this enormous migration?
The number that we received was around 50,000 that are still for process.
50,000.
This includes government people who work with the U.S. government and their families.
Pero kung 50,000, yun din ang hinihingi sa Pilipinas. You mean to say 100%, yung buong 50,000, lahat babagsak sa Pilipinas?
Hindi naman.
Bakit na huminto yung UAE at yung Qatar? Ba't sila huminto? Bakit huminto yung US? Dati naman pinoprocess doon, nakatenga pa, 77,400. Bakit tumigil ang US? Bakit sila tumigil? Bakit bigla Pilipinas ang naisip?
Well, hindi naman naisip. Ang pagkaalam namin, they were asking other countries, and the Philippines is one of them because of the fact that we have this relationship with the United States. We're an ally, so they thought the Philippines could be a place where we could allow them to process their special immigrant visas.
The reason I ask, sir, is that UAE and Qatar are obvious processing areas because of their distance. And they're already doing this, 25,000 and 10,000. Why did they stop? Kung 50,000 na lang ang butal, kayang-kaya na nila idagdag doon. Nagkakaintindihan sila. Magkapareho sila sa kinakain, sa gawi, sa iba't ibang paninindigan at paniwala.
Well, pwede natin itanong sa kanila kung bakit biglang tinigil. Pero ang pagkaalam ko, humingi sila ng tulong sa atin kung pwede nila i-process yung kanilang mga government employee, yung nagtrabaho sa kanila dito sa Pilipinas. As one of the many countries that they're asking for this.
Thank you. Yes, I'm not unwilling to help. Like all Filipinos, we have an open arms policy to all refugees throughout the world at any time. However, it appears to me that we are an unlikely candidate simply because napakalayo po natin. Parang inilalayo natin sila lalo, samantalang meron ng existing. Unang-una, kung babagsak rin sila sa US, bakit hindi nga ituloy-tuloy na lamang yung nandyan sa Virginia? Nahinto ba, since Washington DC is clearly by Virginia, have they stopped processing people in the National Convention Center, please?
I don't think so. I think they're still processing a number of them as of now.
I see, because I understand from press releases that with the Operation Allies Refuge, Operation Allies Welcome, and the other enduring welcome efforts of the United States, the Biden administration announced that Afghan nationals in October 1 of 2022 will no longer be able to enter the US under the Humanitarian Parole Authority. So tinigil sa US, samantalang ito empleyado ng US. Bakit tayo ang magiging sangkalan? Yun lang ang tanong ko.
Well, pwede natin itanong sa kanila kung bakit sa atin na. Pero as I said, isa tayo sa mga ibang mga bayan na humingi sila ng tulong kung pwede idaan doon bago nila dalhin sa Amerika.
Yan po ang iniharap namin sa inyo na issue na pag-uusapan sa week na ito kaugnay dito sa mga Afghan nationals, no, na dating empleyado ng US government doon sa Afghanistan nung sinakop nila ito. At dadalhin muna dito sa Pilipinas, aayusin ang papeles bago dalhin doon sa United States. Kayo, mga kabravo, ayan ang tanong natin. Ano sa palagay ninyo? Maganda ba, dapat ba na payagan ng Philippine government na dito muna pansamantalang maninirahan itong mga Afghan nationals bago dalhin sa US? Or hindi kayo papayag? Comment lang po kayo sa ating comment section. Yan po ang ating mainit-init na balita at issue na pag-uusapan ngayong araw na ito. Nep Castillo nagulat para sa Bravo News. So, nandun kanina sa Senado ang Department of National Defense, Philippine National Police, pati ay